Hey everyone, how are you doing today? My name is Makeda Valletta, also known as the Body Scientist. And in case you're unfamiliar with me, I'm an exercise physiologist, strength and conditioning coach, nutritionist, just with a holistic approach to the body. And I'm live on my Instagram page, the_body_scientist. I will save it and then repost it to my YouTube, The Body Scientist 81. So a lot of you are familiar with me, but just brief intro when you're not. If you're not, I have a holistic approach to health in the body, fitness, nutrition, and all the ways to take our body to its highest level, right? So I'm very serious about that when it comes to myself and my clients. And there's a lot of health propaganda out there. And so my mission is just to educate those who want to be educated and speak the truth, put out the truth. I've been researching and practicing, being a practitioner for almost 20 years now. And so, when it comes to your health, what you don't know can hurt you, okay? So today, my background is in exercise and sports science, nutrition science, and I'm currently in a grad program for medical cannabis science and therapeutics. And so I wanted to have a conversation today about tobacco, okay? Because lately there has been, of course, a lot of talk about medicinal marijuana and a lot of states passing laws and public opinion starting to change and people starting to be aware of the fact that cannabis, marijuana, does have medicinal properties for sure. But with that acknowledgement, there are people that are constantly putting down tobacco, right? And they compare cannabis to tobacco. And the more that cannabis is becoming legalized, there is less tobacco smoking, right? However, and I see people put, tobacco in this category of like poison. But however, tobacco is also a medicinal herb, okay? Let that be known that tobacco, something's in my eye. Tobacco is a medicinal herb to Native Americans, all right? And I remember the first time I learned this was in a book about traditional Mexican midwifery, okay? Traditional Mexican birth practices. There was a book that I was reading and they were talking about how Mexican midwives use tobacco in labor, okay? So it was used in labor. Also, so is cannabis, okay? And cannabis is used in labor in a variety of different ways. There's a woman named Susan Weed who is supposed to be one of the authorities on herbs for women. One of the experts, you could say. She's written many books on herbs for women. And she has one on herbs for women in childbearing years. And she talks about how smoking cannabis in labor can help, okay? And that the way you want to use it when you're in labor is smoking it because, not eating it or anything like that. And she talked about that. And I could get on with, in terms of cannabis and its use in pregnancy and birth is a whole nother conversation that is delicate to some people. But I've done a lot of, research and stuff with that over the years as well. And my research is not just book knowledge. It's also speaking to traditional shamans, speaking to people who've been doing stuff and working with certain herbs for years, right? But when I learned this about tobacco from reading this book, and I've been aware of the fact that tobacco is also medicine for years. And one thing I do know about herbs, I'm not an herbalist, I do study herbs, certain herbs, but I know my place and my role, I'm more of a nutritionist with some knowledge of herbs. But what I do know about herbs is that you use it differently depending on what you're using it for. Okay, even with cannabis, depending on what you're using it for, it dictates how you should use it for that. If I have knee pain, smoking weed is not going to help me. But maybe taking an oil and rubbing it on topically will, right? Same thing with cannabis, okay? With every herb, it can be used a lot of different ways. It could be smoked, it can be made into a tea, it can be probably eaten or cooked or take a bath with it, beat yourself with it, scrub yourself with it. There's a lot of different ways that herbs can be used, right? So when I went to Cuba in 2016, I've been to Cuba 5 times from 2016 to 2018. And in Cuba, they have books everywhere about everything, right? But there's so many books about tobacco medicine in Cuba. I wish I had bought some of them. If I ever go back to Cuba, which I'm getting the urge to go back to, if I ever go back there, I'm going to buy some of those books. They're all in Spanish, but I can work on my Spanish. But they have so many books on tobacco medicine. They have 400, 500 page books on tobacco medicine. In Cuba, they worship tobacco. However, In Cuba, they demonize cannabis, right? Cannabis is very illegal. And even though a lot of Latin America, a lot of Spanish-speaking countries in Central and South America are legalizing cannabis, or at least legalizing it medicinally. But there's a lot of that happening in the Americas, okay? Because we know Canada legalized it. We know that the United States has not legalized it, but a lot of states have. Many countries in South America and Central America have as well. But tobacco, again, it made me think, okay, if people are getting oral cancer from chewing tobacco, perhaps they're not using it correctly, because with herbs, anybody who understands traditional herbs, there are protocols of how you use it. And if you don't use it correctly, then it may be harmful, right? So this is a book, too, that I just ordered off Amazon a little while ago, right? It's called Plant Teachers, okay? Plant Teachers, Ayahuasca, Tobacco, and the Pursuit of Knowledge, okay? And this book was written by, one of the co-authors. I read another book by him now that I see it. The author of The Cosmic Serpent, DNA and the Origins of Knowledge. I've read that book. Jeremy Narby, PhD. Studied anthropology at Stanford University and now works as Amazonian Projects Director for Newville Planet, a nonprofit organization that promotes the economic and cultural empowerment of indigenous peoples. He lives in Switzerland. Rafael Chanchari Pazuri is a native of the Peruvian Amazon, an elder of the indigenous Shawi people, and a traditional healer. He lives in Iquitos, Peru, okay? So that's who the authors are of this book. And this book is into some of the science of tobacco, right? So it's a good book to check out. There are other books too. And one thing I'm going to say about tobacco, one thing I'm going to say about cannabis, right? You could consume as much weed as you want, and it's not going to kill you. At best, it'll make you feel like you might die if you eat too much of it, but you won't. And at best, you'll fall asleep for a long time and you'll be all right. But cannabis cannot kill you. Tobacco, however, if you consume a lot of it, it can. Like a drop of like pure tobacco oil can kill somebody, okay? So tobacco can be poison or it can be medicine, okay? Whereas like cannabis is not poison, all right? So that's one of the differences. But acknowledging the medicinal properties of tobacco, because tobacco is not all bad, all right? So I took some notes in here that I want to point out. So I got to go, I have pages of notes. So sorry if I'm looking down because I can't remember everything on top of my head. So there are, and some of this is coming from this book, right? So there are tobacco shamans in the Peruvian Amazon, okay? It is a very important herb in indigenous medicine, as I said, okay? As I've been aware of this for years. In the Americas in particular, all right? Tobacco is a two-spirited herb. It's either, like I said, medicine or malice, okay? Or malice being brujeria, okay? Brujeria, sorcery, or malidad, okay? That tobacco could be either one of those things, as I pointed out. According to the shaman in this book, all powerful plants are dual-spirited, okay? Ayahuasca, some other chambria palm, and some other herbs that I haven't heard of, okay? And that's tobacco. And see, I could get on to the spiritual side of it, but this page is like more my science page. I might do that more on my other page. But I always say that Western science doesn't confirm anything that indigenous people didn't already know. Because indigenous people have been using tobacco for years, for generations. And they didn't have the scientific lab to tell them any of these things. So I do think that indigenous cosmology and understanding of an herb is important to to acknowledge and learn. Because sometimes I think that's why certain things mess people up. Because they're using it in a way that is not natural or the way it's not intended, and then it backfires, all right? So combining tobacco with other forest plants makes it more powerful and teaches you the medicine of sorcery, teaches you medicine of sorcery, okay? Now, it's interesting, combined with other medicinal plants. Like, for me, when I smoke cannabis, I like it rolled in a tobacco leaf. I've never been a fan of just smoking tobacco. I was never a cigarette smoker. I don't even like smoking hookah. I don't like smoking hookah because, I don't even know what chemicals and flavors. I don't trust that charcoal. I don't trust anything about hookahs. But the one time I did smoke hookah, I remember it just made me feel too lightheaded. Like, to me, tobacco, smoking too much of it makes me feel like lightheaded, like all up here, airy. Whereas like cannabis is more grounding, right? And I remember years ago, a Cherokee friend of mine, my Native American friends, whenever they prayed, they always smoked a mixture of weed and tobacco. Okay, they might mix tobacco with the weed or put the weed. It was always tobacco. So I always knew it's medicine to indigenous people, and it's associated with prayer. Just like for Rastas and other people in the world, smoking weed is associated with prayer. Like prayer, smoking in itself has health benefits and is connected to spirit, because breath is connected to spirit. So that breathing. Okay, so when people think that smoking is just inherently bad, that's not true. Because studies actually show that smoking cannabis does not harm your lungs, okay? Smoking cannabis is not bad for your lungs. It does not lead to lung cancer. There's many studies that show this, okay? But the same thing is true with tobacco. Now, what the commercial tobacco industry has done to tobacco can make it bad, because they're putting chemicals all over it, just like they put chemicals all over the food we eat. Like, we can't just say beef is bad or apples are bad, but if you get it from the commercial food industry where they've put tons of pesticides on it or tons of antibiotics and chemicals, then it can make it bad. But it in itself, in its natural state, is not inherently bad, okay? So, as this says, combining tobacco with other medicinal plants makes it more powerful, right? And that's why I said, that's how I smoke my weed. I don't like weed in those white rolling papers or in pipes. It's too crackheadish to me. I don't like bongs. Okay, I put my cannabis in a tobacco leaf. That is how I smoke tobacco. Okay, so tobacco. Okay, mapacho is like I think it's like a tobacco paste. Okay, that's made in the Amazon. So mapacho goes with ayahuasca. Okay, so it's saying that when somebody does ayahuasca or consumes ayahuasca, it's supposed to be combined with mapacho, which is some type of tobacco paste or something. Now, I've never consumed ayahuasca, but back when I was like in my early 20s, I went to a peyote ceremony in Texas with an Apache friend of mine. And I think peyote is similar. From my understanding, peyote is like the male and ayahuasca is the female. But what I do know is that I remember reading a book back then. The only reason why I knew what peyote was back then was because I read a book called The Shaman in a Woman's Body by Barbara Tedlock. Okay, definitely need to read that book. It's called The Shaman in a Woman's Body by Barbara Tedlock, who's also a PhD. Reclaiming the Feminine in Medicine and Religion. And in this book, there was a chapter about how indigenous women, I think this might have been in Mexico, consume peyote when they were pregnant. Okay, so peyote is similar to ayahuasca, and it is common practice for women to consume peyote while pregnant, right? So, and there's a whole chapter about peyote medicine. So that's how I learned about peyote, and I ended up stumbling upon a peyote ceremony back, like, this might be like 2006 or something like that. And I remember my friend who took me to it, he just was like, listen, I'm going to take you to this ceremony. And he was like, they're going to pass the stuff around, medicine around. He was like, just keep consuming it. He said, if you feel sick, when you call sick, we call getting well. Like, so if you feel like you're going to throw up or whatever, just do that and keep on consuming it, but don't stop consuming it. He said to me, you know, what you consider getting sick is getting well, because if you have something toxic in your body, it could be energies or anything, you're going to throw up. And they look at that as you're getting well because you're eliminating that, right? And that can be true too when people are like so-called sick. A lot of people could say your body's eliminating the toxins, so you're getting well, right? Okay, so, but I think ayahuasca is similar to peyote. Tobacco is believed to make life longer because it cures you, okay? This is according to this Peruvian shaman. Now, and I remember when I was in Costa Rica years ago, and a friend of mine was breastfeeding, a Cherokee friend of mine, and she used to smoke tobacco and cannabis when she prayed, just a little bit. And we asked this shaman, it was a Peruvian shaman who was in Costa Rica, what he thought about cannabis and pregnancy and breastfeeding. And I remember he said, I don't think anything about it. And we were like, you don't think it's bad? Or he's like, I don't think anything about it. Like, basically, it's harmless, was his response, okay? Sure, I love sharing this. I've been wanting to do this video about tobacco for a long time. Because it's annoying to me that now, like, okay, cannabis is being accepted, but now tobacco is being shunned, and they're both medicinal herbs. But all herbs, you have to learn how to use them properly. And that's why every time we see a smoke shop in America, there's always an Indian in front of it. You know what I'm saying? Because tobacco is medicine to Native people. But the story's getting changed. Okay? Tobacco takes away drowsiness and cures incompetence in humans and dogs. Okay? Takes away drowsiness. Okay? And it cures incompetence in humans and dogs. Okay? How dogs use cannabis, tobacco, I don't know, but that's what the shaman said. Tobacco can cure people who, out of sheer laziness, don't know how to do things. Interesting, right? Because I've always smoked my weed in a tobacco leaf, and I do all kinds of stuff. And smoking, like I was smoking, dance, write my papers, do whatever, read, okay? So according to this shaman, that's what tobacco does, okay? More generally, it serves to transfer power, capacities, and abilities, but this requires icaros. This requires icaros. And icaros are like songs that you sing to it, right? So, and you study traditional herbalism. I don't care if it's Africans, Native Americans, they sing to herbs when they're using it. They ask for permission. There are songs that go with the herbs, okay? People don't just pick herbs and use them, okay? So this is saying that that it serves to transfer power. Tobacco serves to transfer power, capacities, and abilities, but this requires icaros for the teachings to have an effect, okay? So you have to sing. Tobacco also helps heal snake bites and the bite of stinging ants, all right? It strengthens the masculine and feminine hormones. And when added to other anti-carcinogenic plants, it potentiates them, okay? So tobacco, and I started looking up some studies, but it actually helps to increase testosterone and estrogen in men and women. It helps to increase our sex hormones. And when it's combined with other anti-carcinogenic, which means plants that are anti-cancerous, okay, which is cannabis, okay, and there are others, it potentiates them, so it makes them stronger. So again, I put my weed in the tobacco leaf, okay? It's anti-cancer. So people think, oh my God, smoking a blunt is so bad for you. No, it really isn't though. In small doses, tobacco smoke is medicinal. But in abundance, it destroys the cells and deteriorates the organism. With tobacco smoke, you can heal fright, and it serves to scare off snakes and keep them at a distance. It keeps away bad spirits in ayahuasca sessions, okay? So when people are doing ayahuasca, and I guess they're having visions and stuff and spiritual experience, tobacco helps to keep the bad spirits away, which is good because when somebody's spiritually open, bad spirits can come in and wreak havoc. Now, I don't usually talk about that too much on this page. I try to keep this page very scientific, and I tend to get more into the mysticism of things on my other page, the Renaissance Amazon, but I'm just going to combine the two today because I told you about this book, which is scientific and spiritual. It's dealing with the shaman part of things when it comes to tobacco, and it's dealing with the science part. Okay, so I'm going to get into both of them. Tobacco allows you to have an exchange with, I think this is Sashiruna, which is a forest person or forest people. Tobacco is left as an offering on the tree for this deity, and traditional consumers of tobacco did not suffer from lung cancer or mouth cancer. Okay, so again, like knowing that tobacco is a medicinal herb to Native Americans, some people are surprised by that. We always hear smoking tobacco causes cancer, causes lung cancer, and we hear about the baseball players that chewed tobacco and got oral cancer, right? But traditional consumers of tobacco didn't have those problems, okay? So we have to ask why people have those problems now. Either the tobacco is full of bad chemicals and or people are consuming it incorrectly. You have to always, that's why I always believe in consulting with the people who've been using a particular herb for generations. That's going to give you more knowledge than just simply going to the lab and trying to figure it out scientifically. You could try to figure it out scientifically after you find out what people have been doing. Then try to figure that out scientifically. But just blind eye trying to figure it out, I definitely think when it comes to herbs, you have to consult with people who've been using it. So, let me go back. Smoking tobacco in the evening before going to sleep is good because it teaches you to dream good things. When you drink ayahuasca, you need mapacho to complement the medicine. I already said that. Mapacho is tobacco. Tobacco helps to stabilize oneself if one is excited, when there is too much emotion, or when depression is sometimes, when depression sometimes comes, or anger. Okay, so tobacco helps to stabilize oneself if one is excited, or too excited, there's too much emotion, depression is setting in, or anger. Okay, and again, I smoke a blunt. If I'm starting to feel like I'm depressed, sad, angry, someone's pissing me off, made my nerves bad, I smoke weed and a tobacco leaf. Okay, so what is saying that this tobacco helps with? You know what? Cannabis helps with the same thing. Cannabis will help chill you out. If you're angry, you're about to get depressed, you're stressed, cannabis does the same thing, which is why I always said I love cannabis and a tobacco leaf. Just shows how I'm smart. Okay, I didn't even know this stuff when I did that, but I've always been consistent with that, right? When you okay, so the whole process of smoking tobacco is sacred, and it should be done while one is in a calm, focused, and intentional state. What did I tell you? My Native American friends, they always smoke tobacco when they pray. Native people believe in dedicating themselves to smoking tobacco, mapacho, because it is a powerful plant with a spirit. Okay? Scientists have studied tobacco more than any other plant in the history of science. Did you know that? Because I didn't. Okay, so scientists have studied tobacco more than any other plant in the history of science. Cannabis is about to be next. The tobacco plant produces about 4,000 different organic substances. Sounds like cannabis, but like a lot of medicinal plants, right? Tobacco produces a number of alkaloids which contain nitrogen and have strong physiological impacts on animals and humans. Okay, cannabis also has impacts on animals and humans. Nicotine is by far the primary alkaloid. It is one of the more toxic botanical substances. 1 or 2 drops on the tongue of pure nicotine can kill a person. So I did tell you tobacco can be medicine or it can be poison. Okay, whereas like cannabis is never going to kill you. Okay, it's just if you smoke too much of it or eat too much of it, you just go to sleep. But it won't kill you. Like tobacco can be poison. Now, drops of nicotine, that's a lot. That's way more concentrated and is absorbed differently than when you smoke it as well. So take that into consideration. Nicotine is so from the plant's point of view, nicotine serves as a defense against predatory insects. And I think that's true too with cannabis, with the terpenes or something that also are protecting it against insects. So that's what the nicotine does in the tobacco. People have used nicotine as a potent insecticide for centuries. The toxicity of nicotine depends on how it enters the body. Oh, what did I just say? Smoking tobacco and nicotine entering that way is different than taking pure nicotine and dropping it on your tongue. It enters the body differently. Just like smoking weed is different than eating weed or putting it on your skin, those things require different metabolism. Okay, so it's different effects on the body. So the toxicity of nicotine depends on how it enters the body. When absorbed through the skin, it is about 1,000 times more potent than when eaten or smoked. Okay, so that's tobacco. When tobacco is absorbed through the skin, it is 1,000 times more potent than when it is eaten or smoked. All right. So this is important to understand that. You know, there's different mechanisms in metabolism depending on how you are consuming something. Now, I've never seen or heard of anybody using tobacco topically, except I know that Native American midwives who use tobacco in labor, I don't know exactly how they do it, but I remember reading something about them using the leaf. They might use a leaf and apply that topically, which is also different than taking pure nicotine and rubbing it on. So all those things make a difference. If you have a leaf and you make a poultice out of that, that's different than taking a concentrated nicotine or a tobacco oil or something. All of those are different. And I'm not an expert on all the ways that tobacco is used medicinally. But like I said, if I ever go back to Cuba, I'm definitely buying some of those books because Cuba has 400-page books on tobacco medicine. Okay. And this book has some good stuff in it, but it's like not that long. In Cuba, there's like literally 400, 500-page books this thick on tobacco medicine. All right. When one eats tobacco, The stomach acids break down the nicotine molecules to some extent. When it's smoked, the combustion transforms a large part of the nicotine into less lethal compounds, okay? So again, people think that smoking is always this bad thing. And that's absolutely not true, okay? Because again, because I remember learning years ago, back in the 80s, 90s, a lot of people smoked cigarettes. My mom smoked growing up. My dad smoked cigars, and he didn't really smoke them. I didn't really understand the cigar thing. It was like a prop, and every now and then it would be like 2 puffs from a cigar. Cigar smoke is too freaking strong to me, okay? But my mom smoked cigarettes, all right? Now, I don't see my dad ever smoke tobacco. My mom does not smoke cigarettes anymore. She gave it up cold turkey, but my dad definitely smokes weed, right? But I'm just saying that when people think that smoking, like it's like this unsaid thing, that this consensus that smoking is bad for you. It's just bad for you. But I always knew that wasn't true, because I'm like, well, you're smoking crack, that's different. But even then, crackheads don't seem to die. Not that I would ever smoke crack. Crack is definitely whack. But I'm just saying, crackheads, they don't seem like they be dying. Like they be having mad energy, working out and all that stuff. But I'm just saying that it says right here that when you smoke tobacco, the combustion transforms a large part of the nicotine into less lethal compounds. So perhaps that's why smoking it is better than sitting there chewing it. Even though indigenous people did chew it, but you have to find out how they chewed it, how much they chewed it. I'm not interested in chewing tobacco, so I'm not like into that, but I'm just saying, why did indigenous people chew it and they didn't get oral cancer, but then you have baseball players that do? So then you have to look at what's the difference. Is there a difference in the kind of tobacco, the quality of it, were they chewing it too much? I don't know, right? Smoking is a fast way to get nicotine into the blood and brain, and relatively little risk of overdose. Same thing is true with cannabis, okay? Same exact thing. Smoking, and that's the reason why Susan Weed, this expert, she's a expert on herbs for women in childbearing years. She says in labor, women should smoke cannabis, because you know when you've had enough and you can stop. You know what I'm saying? When you're eating it, you don't know until it hits you, and it might just be too damn much. All right, so same thing. Smoking too much tobacco tends to make people nauseous or even unconscious. Again, I told you, that's why I don't like smoking. I don't smoke tobacco. I just put my weed in a tobacco leaf. That's all the tobacco I need. To me, I never understood people just smoking tobacco and smoking hookahs. I smoked hookah one time, and I really had no desire, but I was around people, and it made me feel sick and lightheaded, and I just didn't like that, right? So it says right here, smoking too much tobacco can make you nauseous or even unconscious. Smoking tobacco is the most common way that the Amazonian shamans consume tobacco. Although they also chew, drink, lick, and snuff it. And it is rare, and in rare cases, they consume it through rectal absorption, okay? Absorbing too much through the rectum can kill you. Now, you can also do all those things with cannabis. I mean, I don't know about snuffing it. I think that's sniffing it. Sniffing it. I don't know about sniffing cannabis. I don't like things that you have to sniff anyway. But people use cannabis rectally too. If maybe, like, let's say they're a cancer patient and they can't hold down any food. Every time they eat, they throw it up, and they're trying to get the medicine inside their body. They might have to use it rectally. Using it vaginally too. Cannabis can be used vaginally to absorb, but it won't kill you. Okay, so this is saying that tobacco is consumed rectally sometimes, but too much of it can kill you that way. Nicotine closely resembles acetylcholine. Okay, acetylcholine, which is produced by our bodies and brains, just like cannabinoids. Are very similar to endocannabinoids that our body produces, right? So nicotine resembles acetylcholine, all right? And acetylcholine, okay, that word, choline is a really important, you could say nutrient or molecule or compound that is needed for our brain. Okay, I post about choline all the time. Choline is in eggs, okay, egg yolks. That's one of the reasons why eggs are such a good brain food. They're high in choline, okay? When nicotine binds to our neurons, it causes them to release a flood of brain chemicals such as dopamine, glutamate, noradrenaline, and endorphins, as well as acetylcholine. Increased glutamate strengthens connections between neurons, which facilitates learning and remembering. All right? Like I told you, I'll be smoking weed in a tobacco leaf. When I was in college, that was the semester I smoked the most weed. I was in a dean's list, okay? Increased endorphins, which are small increased endorphins. Endorphins are small particles that function as painkillers, and it can lead to feelings of euphoria, And now, like, endorphins were believed before to be responsible for the runner's high, but now it's known that it's not endorphins, it's actually cannabinoids, endocannabinoids that's responsible for that. But they work together, okay? Increased acetylcholine makes people feel alert and re-energized, okay? So increased acetylcholine makes people feel alert and re-energized. Nicotine can trigger all these effects at once via its impact on brain receptors designed for acetylcholine, okay? So it sounds like tobacco has compounds, alkaloids, okay, nicotine, which is similar to acetylcholine, which our body produces and uses, just like cannabinoids are similar to endocannabinoids. The phytocannabinoids, the CBD, the THC, and all those things are similar to endocannabinoids that our body produces, okay? So again, this omnivore thing. See how plants and animals work together? The plant and the animal kingdoms work together? Acetylcholine is not just a brain chemical. Acetylcholine is an extremely old molecule involved in regulating basic cellular functions like gene expression, cell proliferation, and differentiation, okay? So cell proliferation and differentiation, okay? So that means cell differentiation is like, we have different cells. We have heart cell, lung cell, tongue cell, eye cell. Like, all the different cells in our body have, depending on what organ it's a part of, they have different roles and functions. And something has to give it a signal and tell it, you're a heart cell, or you're a, intestinal cell, or whatever, okay? So acetylcholine helps with that, okay? It helps with cell-to-cell contact, immune function, electrical activity, locomotion, secretion, and absorption, okay? All of those things that acetylcholine helps with. The vast majority of human cells produce acetylcholine and have receptors for it on the surfaces, okay? So what happens? Our neurons produce endocannabinoids on demand, and we have receptors damn near in every part of our body, right? Sounding similar in some ways to tobacco, right? The mechanisms of action of how they work and stuff like that is different, but I'm just saying. There are nicotinic receptors on cells in muscles, the skin, the pancreas, the lungs, the pituitary gland, the adrenal glands, the immune system, the digestive system, blood, the ovaries, and testes. Nicotine promotes the growth of new blood vessels, and it quiets the immune system when it overreacts by bringing down inflammation. Okay, so cannabinoids also can calm down inflammation and modulate the immune system when it's overreacting. Sounds like tobacco and cannabis are a great combination. However, the fact that nicotine promotes the growth of new blood vessels, that could be good or bad. That's not good if you have cancer, okay? If you have cancer, you do not want to consume something that's going to produce more blood vessels, because it'll just help the cancer grow stronger, okay? But if you have diabetes, okay, and you're having neuropathy and circulatory problems, then it's a good thing, right? So, one of the many roles of acetylcholine is to act as an anti-inflammatory molecule, especially when the immune system overreacts, just like cannabinoids, okay? Yeah, CBD has a lot of the same mechanisms. I mean, it works different. I'm sorry. There's different receptors and stuff like that. But CBD does help modulate the immune system and calm down inflammation. It's just that CBD won't kill you like nicotine can if you consume too damn much of it, okay? When the immune system, acetylcholine neutralizes pro-inflammatory molecules, but if the nicotinic receptors are blocked, no acetylcholine is released, and the inflammation goes out of control. Okay, so it is thought that COVID, I shouldn't have said that word because now I'm going to have tags on my video, but this C19 virus is said to block these receptors, okay? That C19 virus is said to block these nicotinic receptors. And if those receptors are blocked, the body cannot produce acetylcholine, which helps to modulate the immune system, okay? Nicotinic receptors also play a role in the development of Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, schizophrenia, and epilepsy. Accumulating evidence shows that nicotine may help Parkinson's because it's an illness that kills dopamine-producing neurons, and nicotine stimulates dopamine production in the brain, okay? Nicotine helps with Alzheimer's, an illness that produces plaque deposits between neurons, because nicotine prevents the proteins that form these deposits from joining together. Okay? It's always important, Western science helps us understand the mechanism of actions that just provides proof of stuff that was known by indigenous people, which is why tobacco was sacred medicine to the indigenous people of the Americas for generations. Okay. People with epilepsy should avoid nicotine because it can trigger seizures. Okay. Amazonian people use wet tobacco leaves or tobacco powder plasters. Okay. A tobacco powder plaster is like an organic, natural nicotine patch. Okay. To treat all kinds of painful ailments. Okay, they use this to treat all kinds of painful ailments. You can use cannabis patches and cannabis oil topically to treat all kinds of painful ailments. Scientists recognize that nicotine reduces pain by acting on the nicotinic receptors in the brain and spinal cord. Well, cannabinoids help to reduce pain too, by acting on cannabinoid receptors in our spinal cord, okay, in the brain. Morphine releases acetylcholine, which acts on these receptors. Scientists have confirmed that nicotine can improve attention and memory. Cannabis helps improve my attention and memory. I'm a nerd. All I do is read and study, and I smoke weed every day, okay? Every day. It increases, nicotine increases cerebral blood flow, the blood to your brain. It releases glutamate, which strengthens connections between neurons. It releases noradrenaline, which focuses on attention, and it activates areas of the forebrain thought to it activates areas of the forebrain that are involved in cognition, okay? There's a psychologist, I think his name is Marcelo Spinella or something. He said some years ago that nicotine, the principal psychoactive alkaloid in tobacco, has cognitive enhancing effects. And, there's more, but I'll get into the rest of that on my OnlyFans page. Okay, so you want to get into more information on tobacco medicine, I'll be talking about it there. But you can do your own research. It's hard because, like I said, in Cuba, I would see 400, 500-page books on tobacco medicine. When I try to search for books like that here, there's just short little books like this one, right? But then I first found out about this from a book on traditional Mexican, Indian midwifery and birthing practices, and I learned that that's the first time I learned that tobacco was medicine to indigenous people. But I had observed it too because my indigenous friends smoke tobacco when they pray, and my Native American, my Amerindian people, they knew what they were doing. They knew about medicinal herbs. They were healthy people. Okay, so to me, I believe in looking at what. Also, when you look at people who are like the oldest people in the world, every time they interview someone who's the oldest person in America, or they're the oldest person in the world, and they ask them what they ate, they always say that they had bacon. Okay, they also always say they smoke something. Usually, they smoke like a cigarette every day or a tobacco or something. Okay, they had a shot of whiskey every day. Like, they never say, "Oh, I was drinking green juice and eating salad all the time, and that's how I made it to 110." That's not what they ever say. All right. So, basically, I just wanted to say that, I'm all for cannabis medicine. It's not the only medicinal herb, but it's a very useful medicinal herb that is pretty harmless. But it can be combined with other medicinal herbs. And that tobacco is a medicinal herb. So I get so sick and tired of people demonizing tobacco as if it's poison. And like they bells went off where they realized that cannabis is medicine, and now it's like, oh, let's shame tobacco. No, it's not one or the other. They're both medicine. And even getting into the history of them in this country, because there was a time in this country, and I'm not going to get into it in this video because this is more on my science page, my other page of Renaissance Amazon, where I get more into social stuff and history, anthropology, I could tell you right now, slave masters were definitely encouraging their slaves to smoke cannabis because they thought it would pacify them and chill them out and not make them revolt and make them more focused on their work. Okay, there's a really jacked up history behind that. So I just had to make that clear because I live on Turtle Island. My bloodline is from Turtle Island, also known as America. And I believe in the medicinal practices and herbs of the people who come from this land. And I know that tobacco is one of the most medicinal herbs to indigenous people. Okay? So, again, a lot of things that we get told about health, the opposite is true. And then we have big industries that come and like to destroy things. So they're a big industry that comes and puts chemicals all over tobacco. Because I remember knowing, this is what I was going to say, I remember knowing years ago, the Japanese smoked a lot of cigarettes, but they didn't have a problem with lung cancer. So it was like, why? Japanese apparently smoke more cigarettes than Americans, but they didn't have a lung cancer epidemic. So it's like, well, why do we have a lung cancer epidemic? Possibly because of what they do to the tobacco. If somebody is smoking good quality tobacco, good quality cigarettes that is not laced with a whole bunch of chemicals, it was the chemicals that the tobacco industry and these cigarette companies were putting on the tobacco to make people addicted. That is what was poison. Just like eating beef in a burger is not bad, but if you're eating a burger from McDonald's where they're using fake meat and fake scents and fake flavors and shit to make you think that you're not eating something that's rotten, okay, that's a different burger than if you go get grass-fed meat from a healthy cow from a farm and using good quality cheese and, you know what I'm saying? That's two totally different things. The Philippines as well, but they smoke a lot of cigarettes in the Philippines. Yeah, I'm not a cigarette smoker, never have been. Just give me weed and a tobacco leaf. So I haven't spent a lot of time studying in depth about tobacco and like the world's smokers. But I do know that, like even in Amsterdam, okay, you go places, you can smoke weed, but you can't smoke tobacco. It's like no, so in the Philippines they smoke a lot of cigarettes, okay. And they don't have a lung cancer problem. See, that's good. I haven't dug into that research like that. I'm going to dig into it more on my OnlyFans page and more into the science behind it. But yeah, so I guess I'll end this video here, all right? I'm all into herbal medicine. Food is medicine, okay? It always starts with the food. But the plants complement, the nutrition. The plants complement the animals. We're omnivores. It's all about plant and animal medicine. Plant and animal medicine, okay? They go together. The plants assist. I've always said the plants assist. Nutrition is the backbone, okay? Nutrition is the foundation, let me say. The plants assist. All right? So if you learned something from this video, please like it. Please share it. Please subscribe to my page on Instagram. Please find me on YouTube, The Body Scientist 81. Check out old stuff. Send the video to anybody you think that would benefit from it. And I will see you guys in my next video, okay? Have a good day. Bye.